CIL podcast. I'm your host, Donald Campbell. I'm here with one of my favorite people, Carolyn Quinn at the Mental Health Association in Atlantic County. I always want to say of Atlantic County, but I learned a while ago that it is in. You guys are in. I guess that makes more sense.
I mean, we both are in Atlantic County
Yeah,
right now.
we're not of Atlantic County. So, yeah, don't worry, everybody. The whole podcast will not be discussing what MHA chose in and not of to be their
I
name.
thought we were talking geography.
Yes, people love
Oh,
it. That's
man.
why they come on in this interview. So for those for people, I'm very familiar with the Mental Health Association, but for anybody who doesn't know, Carolyn, take it away. Tell us about the Mental Health Association, a little bit about what you do. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, hi all, and about time I get to come hang with Donald on his cool podcast. Honored to be here. The Mental Health Association. So we are connected nationally to Mental Health America. And, years ago they changed their name for branding to Mental Health America from Mental Health Association. The Mental Health Association in New Jersey has some statewide programming and satellite offices, and we are one of those satellite offices in Atlantic County. We often say that we provide support, education, and advocacy primarily around mental health challenges, and really with a goal to help support the community and the folks in the community around mental health challenges. I've been with the Mental Health Association 11 years and have had the privilege of working in many different programs around serving the folks, mostly adults that live with mental health disorders, both through doing one-to-one support and support groups, working with our boarding homes, partnering with organizations like, the Atlantic Center for Independent Living.
Yeah, that can be okay.
And I find that the projects that we do tend to have some flexibility because many folks that provide mental health services are in what's called a fee-for-service model. Kind of like if you go to your primary care doctor, the doctor bills and then gets reimbursed. And so in the mental health field, that then means it limits agencies with their availability of staff and meeting with folks. And we are funded still by the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services and block grants, and it allows us to really fit the need of the community at the time. And it allows for a lot of creativity, a lot of community building and collaborating. And it's been truly a very lucky experience for me to work here and to get to work with the folks in our organization. Donald knows very, very well our fabulous executive director, Vicki Phillips. We have to give her a shout out, Donald.
Yes, we do have to do it. She'll be on the podcast too, everybody. You guys can rank your favorite mental health
MHA staff. Oh, I better really turn the charm on.
Yes, you can rank that in your interview. Yeah. So I always like to, before we get more into the services, how'd you get? I always like to know people's like superhero origin stories. So like, how'd you get in this world? Was this part of the plan, or how did this? I don't think I ever heard this story.
I love it. The origin story of Carolyn.
Quinn.
I knew I always wanted to work to help people. I initially thought occupational therapy was kind of going to be my thing. When I was probably like 12 years old, a family friend's granddaughter was diagnosed with leukemia, and I was babysitting her for the summer. And so I went with her to all of her appointments at Children's Hospital and was working to try and distract her and help her, do chemotherapy with her stuffed animals so she understood what was happening to her through play. And it just really, I think, solidified for me that this is a little bit more of how I wanted to help folks. And I went to school in Boston, at Boston University, and I was working on a degree in occupational therapy and had to take a class around psych rehab, and at the same time had been really struggling with my own mental health of depression and anxiety, living 6 hours away in a city and just trying to cope with adulthood really hit. And it has been and continues to be a struggle in my life, but I have absolutely found wellness. And I think this job at the Mental Health Association is pivotal in how I was able to find wellness, which is why I think part of why I feel so privileged to be here, but I started to struggle with my own mental health, and I was unable to complete my master's in occupational therapy and kind of had to take a breather, come home, and really started to think that more of like a social work, working in the mental health field was for me. And on a whim on Craigslist, because I'm that old, nonprofits used to list jobs on
Excellent.
Craigslist because it was free. I found the Mental Health Association and didn't realize that there were jobs out there where you could share your own challenges. I thought you were supposed to not tell anyone that you
Yeah.
struggled with
Well,
mental
because
health.
that's what the culture says a
Yeah,
lot of times, and I think it's changing. And I think that your experience is very common. I think that transition between, I always think when people, especially when you have like anxiety or depression or any mental health type thing, a lot of times those transitions can really trigger it, like those transitions in life, moving to a new
yeah,
spot and having to build a new support system, especially when you're young and you're just trying to figure like what is going on? What are we doing?
yeah,
What are we doing here? I was fine in my bubble and now I'm in this whole new place and
bingo.
it can be really scary. So talk about mental health, but talk about like the peer because one of the things I love about Mental Health Association and that it has in common with SILS is it's much more about learning from your peers and that the peers, the people with the mental health disabilities are the ones coming up with the program and employed at the association, and I think that's a lot different from the medical model. So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And I think I mean, like you said, it so overlaps. And I think it stems in the recognition that as somebody with a disability or a condition, however you're feeling that day, that you still know yourself the best. And so with supports, you can determine what is best for you. And it's a very big difference of a shift. And it is empowering for folks to realize that they have the ability to affect their wellness. And it might be little things like making sure you stick to a schedule, making sure you get, some sunlight and, going for a walk. And, you know, it's not always these like big fixes,
Right.
but the idea kind of stemmed from this point of all these folks who were leaving the hospitals from like being institutionalized decades and decades ago and started to kind of come together and learn from each other of this integration into the community, and that we're able to kind of support each other and say like, I'm really struggling with maybe going to the grocery store, but somebody else is like, I'm really struggling like trying to get a library card, or simple things. But I think the piece is really being able to see that you are not alone, being able to be coached and be able to learn how to do these things for yourself is very empowering, very much where a lot of our perspective comes from. And so we provide that kind of peer model in our one to one work within our support groups. And it's not just me, it's our team that has that lived experience of some kind. You
Yeah,
can't
'cause-
ever, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I was just gonna say, talk about those support groups because I mean that's really you guys do so much, but when I think of MHA, I always think first thing that comes to mind is support groups. So talk about that and kind of how it's evolved too since the pandemic, because you guys have really just expanded your services and found new ways to reach people.
We have. Like you said, the support groups have been what we've done. The first, I think, 7 years I worked here, I did a depression support group in a very moldy church basement in Linwood. And sometimes 15 or 20 people would come on a Wednesday night and just share the good and the bad and get support and feel a little bit better as they, walked out. And it was what we did. We did in-person support groups. And, just like everyone else, we had to very quickly adapt during the pandemic. And so we had one group that met on Zoom before, March of 20, and we put everything in there. And as we started doing these support groups, we figured the folks that came to our in person groups would just come to our virtual groups. And they did. But then we started to realize other people were Googling and finding our website and coming on. And the model of our self-help program is that, you can be anonymous if you want to. We're not there looking at licenses to verify addresses and names or anything, we
Or
just kind of ask.
documentation. It's not about show me you're depressed,
Right.
prove it to me. It's about we accept you, which is again different than what a lot of people are used to when they're receiving services with any type of disability.
And that is what the CIL does too, which is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yes.
It's why we get along so well.
Yes, exactly.
But the cool thing was, so people just started coming, and we didn't even really at first know that they weren't Atlantic County folks, and then, people would share, and suddenly you're putting together like, wait, might not even be in New Jersey. And as we were moving along in the pandemic and there was hopes of being able to come back in person, we had a very big realization that we were going to now be leaving people without services because it wasn't simply the in-person people went virtual and went back to in-person. It was we gathered all these other, kind of folks along the way. So that's where we needed to make sure and ensure that there was going to be something virtual ongoing. And so the Mental Health Association is, I've never seen any organization like it. I think the CIL is pretty close, but they're fabulous at creating a lot with absolutely nothing.
Yep.
And
That's the world we're in.
it is. And we figured out that we have 3 wellness centers throughout the state, one in Atlantic, one in Ocean, and one in Union County. And we could unite them together and have part of their level of service virtual, ongoing. And so we created United by Wellness in July of 2021 to be a statewide virtual wellness center. And it started out as a pilot, and it very quickly, we were going to do it for 3 months. I think we all knew it would continue on, but I don't think we anticipated it ever being what it has become. In 2022, we offered 3,310 groups, and we had almost 40,000 duplicated members. And when I say duplicated, that means if I went to a group at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, I would count as 2 within that 40,000 for the year.
Wow.
But that averages about 10 and a half people per group. So we very much knew that we were fitting a need. We have had since July of 2021 about 2,600 folks sign up, and the sign up is very simple. It's your name, and it's the name you want to be called, to be clear. What county, if you live in New Jersey, if not out of the state, and your email address. You can share your phone number if we ever need to text you or follow up with you, but the required stuff is your name, the county, and your email. And the reason we ask for the email is we send out a daily newsletter at 1 a.m. and it's just so it's there when folks wake up, and it has on there everything that's happening during the day. We have right now, I would say about 50 groups that happen throughout the week that folks can access. And there's nights, there's weekends. And it really, people come. There's nothing that you get out of it besides what you put into it. There's no, money or housing or food, or it's simply folks coming together to support each other.
And what are some of the topics? Can you give us some of the topics? What are some of the
Why, that is an excellent question.
Yeah.
It's a range of topics. It goes from coping skills, where it is trying out different, journaling activities or chair yoga, or you name it. It's literally try out a small coping skill during the hour. We have groups that are around mental health. They're open share groups, like a depression support group, a gut stress group. There are groups that are looking at how the intersection of physical challenges and mental health challenges so often overlap. There are groups that are more meant to be kind of fun and social. So one of the most, I would say, well-attended groups is on Fridays from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. You heard that right.
Yeah.
Friday, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. We have 3 facilitators that facilitate during that time, and it's called Music to My Ears. And it is just like a big DJ session where people, submit a song and they play the song, that everyone gets to listen to it, and then the person kind of shares why they picked that song. And it could be, like, I really was glad that it was sunny today, and I just wanted to kind of feel like it was summer again. So I, picked like a very summery song, or something more deep around, it's the anniversary of, my mother passing, and this was her favorite song. Like, a wide range of really anything you want to pick that they can, play. And it just brings people together. At the height of the pandemic, they would have 50 or 60 people in attendance on a Friday night.
Wow.
And it continues to be one of our most popular
Yeah,
groups. So
I've heard very good things about that group.
it's a party, literally, you know? So I think that, the to wrap, like, sum it up, like, you really can find very niche groups that are very specific, such as, somebody that lives with borderline personality disorder, or someone who is, in experiencing grief, or something more broad, like, hey, you're feeling down today, to meditation or activities, to a social group of like, let's come and hang out. So it has a little bit of everything in one sense. And one of the groups that we do, and it's only once a month, but it's a town hall, and it's a mixture of our leadership coming and saying, hey, here's the updates. This facilitator is going to be changing their schedule. This facilitator is a volunteer and they found a full-time job and they are unable to continue weekly. They're doing it once a month now. Like, just a communication of us giving updates and then listening to. I wish there was a group that was, more activity based on a Saturday morning, or I wish that, whatever it might be. And we do our best. I think a key piece of the requests are that we need to have somebody on our team with that lived experience.
Right.
So if you, Donald, were like, I really wish there was a group for men that are 32 years old. And it was like, well, let's see if I have anyone that can facilitate a group who is a man of 32 years
Right.
old. And if we do, great. And
Right.
we've had some of those. Or it's like, well, maybe we can help that person learn to facilitate that group with our support, or let's broaden it a little bit. So I like that a big piece of this is driven by the members, because we can't be united without uniting the members in all of this.
Right, and it's all about the key to MHA and to sales too. It's all about the lived experience. Because if you're going to have a group about people who have anxiety, and you have somebody in there who's never had anxiety facilitating the group, it doesn't even work. Even if they were like a doctor in anxiety, it doesn't work, because it's supposed to not be that patient model. It's supposed to be a peer model, and learning from your
Yep.
peers and that experience with that. Just so everyone's clear, how do they sign up? Can they just go to the website? Is that where
Yeah, so you can learn about this on our website. It's www.mhaac.info, info. And on there, you will see United by Wellness, and there is a page about how to join. I don't know where you put the podcast, but maybe we could even put the link in the
Yeah,
description.
Jacob, I was just about to say that Jacob will put it in the description. Jacob is listening. He will find it. But yeah, he'll put it in the description, and it's no cost, and it's just a great resource to have if you're feeling alone. It's a great way to get a sense of community and get connected to other resources and get connected to coping skills and all that stuff. Like, there are services out there, and a lot of people that are in your community doing great work that's easy to be accessible. And I think people sometimes miss it, thinking they're alone. There's so many great things. Now, I want to ask, do you guys still do in person peer
We
support?
do. We do in-person groups. I would say that it goes up and down in attendance, but what we've really learned is that, I think overall people love the accessibility of the virtual groups because maybe it was once a week they came to that, church basement and came to the depression support group years ago, but now it might be, well, I try to hit one United by Wellness group virtually a week, but you tend to sometimes still feel like you get that extra connection of in person. You
Right.
don't get the convenience, but you get sometimes more out of that. And so that's where our in person groups are. And they are also on our website that you will see. And that's the other piece of our wellness center in Atlantic County. And it really has allowed us to continue on that tradition of like sitting in a room and hashing it out. And then with United by Wellness, you have that piece where it's also virtually the accessibility. So hopefully the best of both worlds
Yeah,
because I don't,
I always say one of the positives to come from the pandemic, if there are any, was just having this option. Because in person is great for a lot of people, but there is a whole community out there who it doesn't work, or maybe they'll go to a virtual thing and that actually makes them more likely to come in person because now
yes.
they've had that experience and they know everybody. Like I always tell people that, like people say sometimes when I advocate for virtual services, they'll go, I don't want to lose attendance to my in-person event. And I always think that's like backwards. Like you'll actually increase it in a lot of ways because a lot of like for a lot of new people to go to like a church they've never been to or an office they've never been to, that's a lot. But if they've met them on the virtual world, they're like, oh, okay, I feel comfortable now. I'll come. So I just think
And
it's
the
a benefit.
cool thing we have seen from the virtual world, which I did not at all think about until bam, we were there, was that, on Zoom, you can have your camera off. On Zoom, you could just have your name say Carolyn, not Carolyn Quinn.
Right.
And, as you started to hear, people share over the weeks of going to these groups, maybe suddenly, you do turn your camera on sometimes. Maybe suddenly you do share more about yourself, but it almost allows for a much more approachable way to get connected to people you don't know. And I have seen, which makes me realize that United by Wellness is having an impact on folks, is that folks that have never met are texting each other daily about life. Like they are friends now
Right.
because they have gone to so many different UBW groups. Like, I feel like the trendy thing is joking about like the group chats. Like, I know that there are many UBW member group chats happening, and that just makes me so proud because as somebody who lives with mental health disorders and has found a place of wellness, I also see folks that struggle. And one of my hopes is for as many people as possible to find wellness. And often to find wellness, it involves a social support system that is authentic and not from paid providers. And that has been formed for so many people that have attended UBW. And to me, that is like we're doing some good work,
Yeah, and
that we're helping people.
I would tell people too, like you said, it's not, I always say this, it's not a marriage proposal. Like you go,
Yeah,
you can come try a group. If you don't like it, it's okay. Nobody's gonna come to your house and go, you didn't like the group or you didn't turn on your camera. Like it's just, but you could end up really liking it and being in a group chat and enjoying it and filling your day. So that's the beauty too about how accessible it is. If you don't like it, you can leave.
yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's
And
it.
you didn't drive there and you didn't have to like in person stand up and walk out of the room.
Right.
You just X out the Zoom
Right.
and nobody
You,
ever
you
knows.
never have to see these people ever again. You never have to.
Exactly. And that's the approachability that the virtual brings that I absolutely love. We've done some like questionnaires over the time asking folks, and the one of the ones that really kind of stuck to me was that 93% of the folks we surveyed, which I think was a couple hundred, said that that they strongly agreed to group helping them feel more positive about the future. And to think in February of 2020, when we would chat sometimes, I don't think I could have anticipated the roller coaster of emotions and
Right.
hopelessness folks would have experienced. And I actually think initially that like first 6 months, a lot of our folks were prepared because they've
I
been
know,
through
I see that too.
isolation. You know, it was other folks, and I think it was then the long-term effects for our people
Right.
that the world didn't return as quickly as possible. But to hear folks that, believe me, we have a United by Wellness email, and we sometimes, hear when people aren't happy. So it is. Please let me say that these are real humans that have lots of positive and negative feelings.
They're not shy.
They're not shy, which I love. And to hear 93% say they strongly agree for hope in the future, I was just like, okay, they're doing something here, man. Like, I don't facilitate many groups anymore. It is the team. And I have to get a shout out to the 50 plus facilitators that we have that are paid staff with many other responsibilities, that are interns, that are volunteers who have, there's one gentleman who is an engineer and has two young kids and has facilitated two groups for us for years now because it's so important to his wellness. That what I love about our team is you get such a wide variety of folks. And in this peer work, right? Like my experience is not the same as yours, but we both have, challenges that we live with and have our own lived experience. To have a large group of facilitators available to members to hopefully see themselves in somebody facilitating, I think also allows for that feeling of not alone and that there is hope. And so United by Wellness is nothing without our members, but it's also nothing without our amazing facilitators.
Well, that's a great place to end. I think that thing about hope for the future, like, I don't know, isn't that what we're all trying to do here? Like,
That's what I'm trying to do.
If we're getting people to hope for the future, that's success. I give you guys so much credit. Please check out their groups. They're awesome. They're disability inclusive. They're fun. They're a good time. And if they're not, you can share your opinion, and you can also never come again if you don't have fun. And Carolyn wants to know why you didn't come so she can address it. So
I want to try and make it better.
And just embrace, there are a lot of challenges no matter what your disability is. There still are a lot of barriers. But on the other side of that, I mean, you heard Carolyn in the beginning, the idea of people with mental health disabilities even being out in the community is still a radical thought. It's still a radical idea. I always say that. The idea of people with disabilities taking control of their own lives is still radical. It's still relatively new, and there's been a lot of work done to get there. There's still a lot of work to be done, but a lot of great services. Thank you. And MHA is one of them. Please check them out. They're awesome. They're some of my favorite people. So thank you, Carolyn, for joining us. And I hope
feel
this podcast
honored.
wasn't too painful. You can
No,
tell
it was
Ricky,
fun.
Her podcast interview is going to be much more difficult. Real hard hitting questions. It's gonna be like 60 minutes. We're gonna, it's gonna be, it's gonna be. But
I hope you've got the ticking during, intermission.
I will have the clock. Well, thank you, and please, everybody, click the link on the description if you have any questions. All right, thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Stay well.